Hey guys, Dan here, and this is Dan Does Disney. We've got Tim over Zoom. How's it going, Tim?
It's doing good. Hi, everybody.
And Tim actually has our DVD selection for today. What movie are we going to be talking about?
We will be talking about Kidnapped.
What a movie! What a unheard of movie. Did you have trouble finding this on IMDb, by the way?
Well, I think this is something we should talk about right now. The reason why it's a hard movie to find on IMDb is because it's a string of as of 2013, it's a string of 13 productions titled Kidnapped, all based off of Robert Louis Stevenson's novel.
And they have the wrong year for it.
And they also have the wrong year for it, yes.
They put the production year, which was 1959. So I was looking up Kidnapped 1960 like a sucker. And yeah, it didn't work. All right. So so it came out in February of 1960. And like Tim mentioned, there were a lot of adaptations of this before this version and since. And earlier, it was produced in 1917 by Edison Studios. And then there was two Fox versions, one in 38, one in 48. And then Fox actually still had the rights to the title, but waived them for Disney. I guess they came to some sort of agreement on that. And the announcement of this one came in 1958. This is Disney's first foray back into England since Rob Roy, the Highland Rogue, which I actually hadn't thought about, but we have really done mostly Americana type movies because you had like Littlest Outlaw and all the Davy Crockett movies.
Yeah, it's the first foray back to England, and surprisingly, this movie also has ties with Rob Roy.
Yes, actually, yes, that's true, and we'll get to a couple of those and some of the other movies we've already discussed that have ties to this. But this one I thought was very interesting. So in terms of the home video market, this does not have much of a footprint. I couldn't even find any release information about VHS. I assume it was on VHS at some point, but the DVD that Tim held up is the only one that exists, that version. It was from 2008, so it took them a long time to do that. And it was a Disney Movie Club exclusive, so you couldn't even buy it in stores. But for whatever reason, this is the only Disney Studios film in complete feature film form to be released on this MCA Disco Vision format. Have you ever heard of that, Tim?
No.
Me neither until this afternoon. Apparently, this was MCA's like big attempt to, I guess Beta maybe had come out by then. And this is a precursor to Laserdiscs, precursor to CDs. And it was very, very short-lived. Very few things released on it. But apparently, the patents or whatever involved in this Disco Vision were like used in Laserdisc technology, CD, DVD, and Blu-ray technology.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I don't know why this particular movie was chosen to be the one and only, but in March of 1979, they released it in Disco Vision. So, all right. So like you mentioned, this is a movie that's been done a lot of times before, and it's because it's from a famous book. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote Kidnapped, much like he did with Treasure Island. And while our Robert Stevenson, the director of some of the Disney movies, no relation to Robert Louis Stevenson, was directing Darby O'Gill, he had sort of an idea to do Kidnapped for the next project, so he brought that to Walt. Maybe Walt himself brought it to his attention. I don't know, but either way, they decided to make this the next movie, and so Stevenson read the novel between 8 and 10 times and wrote the screenplay for Kidnapped. And so this movie we're talking about today is the only movie with Robert Stevenson noted as the writer, in addition to being the director. And so in terms of the casting, I should point out, by the way, I wrote this down too. Disney's publicity people either did not know that they weren't related or were just sort of using it to their advantage and lying. But they said in the press materials that he was a distant relative of the author. Did you read that one, Tim?
I did not read that.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting, but nobody knows if they actually like knew that, or they just made it up for the thing or whatever. But um, anyway, so the lead role. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say they probably didn't think it. They were just using it for publicity. It's just like nowadays, whenever they weren't like, oh, like this person, it's like they're like, oh, from the producers of this, but it's like obscure producer, or it's like
Yeah, you
anytime.
think it's Jordan Peele or Judd Apatow, but it's really like
Yeah,
the fourth key grip or something.
yeah, and the Nightmare Before Christmas is always used. It's like, oh, from the director of Nightmare Before Christmas. Everybody's like, oh, Tim Burton. You're like, no, Tim Burton didn't direct Nightmare Before Christmas. He produced it. He wrote it. He almost directed it. He learned everything that he learned from of doing stop motion animation from that, and then he was able to do like Corpse Bride and Frankenweenie. But I forget the guy's name. It's like it's the same guy that did Coraline. So when Coraline came out, everybody's like, oh, Tim Burton, Tim Burton. We're like, nope, you got hoodwinked.
Right. Yeah, you could be right. So maybe this is an early example of that. They knew what they were doing, and still just kind of ran with it. But Tim will obviously talk about the specifics of the casting, but we've seen a lot of these people before. James Macarthur had just done The Third Man on the Mountain, so Disney signed him to a 2-picture deal, including this one, and the other one being the very famed Swiss Family Robinson that we keep talking about on Dan Does Disney. And then Peter O'Toole, this is his first movie. He doesn't have a huge role, but this is his first one. He actually, what did I read? I think it was on IMDb, so you might know this too. But this was his first movie released, but he did 2 movies previously that just hadn't been released yet. Is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah. And then in England, I guess, in a span of like 5 months, he had 3 movies that or came out or something like that.
Yeah, quite the hit over there, pretty instantly. And this was his only Disney movie that he did. He was in Pixar's Ratatouille as a voice, but in terms of straight Disney, he never did any other one. So filming for this was on location, like we talked about. This is straight, from the UK. It was filmed on location in Scotland. Studio work was done in London, and the director Stevenson wanted to film the assassination of one of the characters in the actual locale where it happened, because some of this stuff did actually happen. But the original spot was at that point the site of a forest of Norwegian pines, so they couldn't really film it there. So they did it a little bit down the road. But yeah, so some of the events in this movie are real. Including some of the characters, and a few were made up. But from what I read, it does go pretty closely with the book. Of all the adaptations that they've done, this one apparently is very close to the book.
Yeah, I read. You probably read it too, but people were trying to advise Stevenson when he was doing the screenplay of adding a female into the story. But Disney resisted because he wanted to stay true to the story. And then when I was scrolling through all like the other kidnapped that we had, there was always like on the little thumbnail that I was looking, I'm like, there's always a female on there with them. I was like, well, I guess there wasn't a female in the book, but she now made into a bunch of these other movies.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that harmed it or not. But yeah, it's interesting that most of the other versions did have females involved, and odd that well, I guess maybe not odd, because we've done a couple of these period pieces from England where there aren't a lot of women. Sometimes it was just that woman from Mary Poppins and not too many others.
Well, yeah, I mean, the one that stands out was Treasure Island didn't have any female characters, but there are 3 England movies that we did when they did that set of 4. It was like Sword in the Rose, Rob Roy, and Robin Hood. They all had a female lead in it.
So I guess you got Maid Marian, of course. Yeah. Well, that's interesting then, because Treasure Island, Stevenson again. So maybe he didn't. Maybe he just didn't write any females. And I guess his other famous book is Jekyll and Hyde, and I guess there's not really a lot of females from my recollection of that either.
Yeah, but I did read that he actually has a sequel to the kidnap book. It's called Catriona, or something like that. And that has a female in it. It's named after her, and takes the two main characters, Alan Breck Stewart and David Balfour, and it's like him trying to marry this one girl or something like that.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. So he did write a little bit for both, but his most famous one's not so much. All right. Well, so Tim, let's talk about the plot of this great movie, Kidnapped.
Okay. So like we've talked about, it's based off the 1886 novel, Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson, and it takes place in Scotland in 1751, where young David Balfour learns that he has an uncle that he never knew about after his father's recent death. So he travels to the House of Shawls, where he is greeted without much enthusiasm by his miserly old uncle, Ebenezer. After a failed attempt on David's life, Ebenezer then tricks David onto Captain Horace's ship, where he is kidnapped and is intended to be sold into indentured servitude. Luckily, David's path crosses with Alan Breck Stewart, who turns out to be a Jacobite, warned by authorities, and the two form an unlikely friendship. Can they work together to get David back to the House of Shawls so he can reclaim his rightful inheritance?
What a question.
What a question. So the cast, like we've mentioned James Macarthur a bunch of times recently. Like Dan said, he was in Light in the Forest and Third Man on the Mountain. He plays the lead, David Balfour, and we'll see him one more time in a Disney movie, and that is Swiss Family Robinson.
We should point out too, he's the only person in the cast not from the UK.
That's what I was just about to say.
Oh, okay, sorry.
American that was cast. They had a coach there to help him with his Scottish accent. When we're talking about that, I'll mention it right now. I did think it was quite noticeably bad when the movie started, but for some reason, I don't know if I just adjusted to it, but as the movie progressed, I don't think I noticed it as much.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I thought maybe they just shot most of the movie in sequential order, so he was learning it better as it went along. I don't know.
Yeah, but the first couple scenes, I was like cringing at it, but then eventually I wasn't cringing at it anymore, and I don't know if I just got used to it. It was weird.
Yeah.
So then we have Peter Finch. He plays Alan Breck Stewart. We've seen him once before in a Disney movie, and that was Sheriff of Nottingham. He played Sheriff Nottingham in the 1952's The Story of Robin Hood and His Merry Men. So we've seen him once before, and we will never see him again in any of the Disney movies we talked about that we'll see in the future. You have Bernard Lee. He plays the Captain Horacean. We don't see him again in any Disney movies, but if you're a James Bond fan, you see him a lot of times because he plays M in the early Bond movies.
It's funny that they got Sean Connery from Darby O'Gill, and then this was one of this dude's first movies, and then he became M. I mean, Albert Broccoli must have really been paying attention to the Disney movies when he was thinking about Bond.
Yeah, he might have been just going to the movies for every Disney movie. I don't know.
Yeah.
We have John Laurie. He plays Ebenezer. He previously played the same exact role in the 1956 series Kidnapped. So a couple years earlier, there was a series, like a 6-part series on TV or something like that, and he played Ebenezer once again. So,
yeah, it was on the BBC.
So that was interesting. And you already mentioned Peter O'Toole. He plays Robin McGregor, who is Rob Roy's son, his real life son. Robin McGregor, and so he has interactions with David Balfour, and Peter O'Toole, like Dan talked about, he does a voice for Ratatouille. That's the only Disney thing that he does. But most famously, he's known for Lawrence of Arabia.
Right. Yeah, which was just a few years after this. So I mean, he just blew up after that.
Yeah. And then you already mentioned the director a little bit, Robert C. Ethanson, not related. We'll be talking about him a lot because this is just his 4th Disney movie as director, and he
Out of so many.
Out of 19. He does 19 movies. So we just saw him previously with Darby O'Gill. And the next time we'll see him is the following year, 1961. He does The Absent-Minded Professor.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Also the one very small female role in this, Eileen Way, she appeared in a 1963 version of this film too.
Yeah.
There was apparently another TV version of it. I don't know who ran that, but yeah, that was another person playing the same. I don't know if it's the same role, but yeah, she was in that one too.
Yeah. And I'll point out that like I said, the Catriona book, the 1971 Kidnapped adaptation does cover the Kidnapped book and the first half of the 1893 novel that was the sequel by Stevenson. So
I wonder if any of these versions are also available on DVD or maybe even on YouTube or something. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Not that I necessarily want to run through this again, as maybe we'll get to, but just out of curiosity.
The book and the movie, like Dan said, are set around real 18th century Scottish events, most notably being the Appin murder, which is the assassination of Colin Campbell, aka the Red Fox. And in real life, Alan Breck Stewart was the chief suspect. He evaded capture. He was tried in absentia, and he was sentenced to death. That never happened. However, his foster father, James Stewart, they convicted him of accessory, and he was hanged to death. Later investigations suggested that it couldn't have possibly been Stewart. So there's your history lesson for Dan Does Disney.
Yes, and I wish we actually got more of that context within this film.
Yeah, because there's a lot of dialogue in this movie. There's a lot of talking in this movie. There's not much action. There is some action. But with all the dialogue, it's kind of hard to understand what is exactly going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Between the thick accents and just the all of the plot dump of semi exposition and sort of I don't know the story at all. I didn't know the real story. I'm not familiar with the book. I was a bit lost for a lot of this movie.
Yeah, and like they're alluding to the real life Jacobite uprising that happened in Scotland, which Rob Roy also kind of talked about as well. So there was some connection there, but Rob Roy was such a long time ago for us. I feel like it was like last year. Exactly what happened in that. But I did feel lost, and I feel like I know a little history about this stuff, but I did feel a lot lost.
Yeah. Well, and the second half of the movie, they're really getting into like the Scottish politics of it all. But by that point, I was so confused already as to like what was going on. Not with the characters, I sort of got that, but wasn't really interested that much in it. But I understood what was happening. But the broader scheme of the plot devices and mechanics, I didn't get because I have no knowledge of the history of it.
Yeah. So I will talk really briefly about the stuff I did like.
Okay. There's a little bit.
So I thought Peter Finch did a great job. I thought he had great chemistry with James Macarthur. Accent aside, I thought James Macarthur did his normal James Macarthur the last couple of movies, where he's a competent, decent actor of doing the action stuff and having great chemistry with other people. But I did notice once again when he gets very emotional and gets over the top, it's a little cringeworthy of acting. But then when he settles down to his normal stuff and you kind of forget about the accent, I think it's a decent job. And then I also thought the location was great. It was great seeing Ireland again. I think since Rob Roy, they had better cameras in England because I thought it was a little bit more clarity and clear and beautiful landscapes.
Well, and when you think about the timing, I mean, the last time Rob Roy was what, 53 or something?
Something like that. 54.
53, probably. 54. And so now we're easily 5 to 6 years after that. And yeah, I mean, the BBC, you know, like we were in America, we were like on the cutting edge of television. The BBC really sort of didn't get its start quite as early as we did. So you would have to imagine that their technology in 1959 when they filmed this was leaps and bounds better than 52 or 53, whatever. So yeah, I agree. I think it's the best looking probably of all. Well, Sword in the Rose had some really nice scenes for sure. But yeah, I think from a technological standpoint, it looked great. There was you know, a little bit of studio work done in London, like I mentioned, but most of it was done on location and looked gorgeous.
Yeah, I imagine they had the famous matte painter out there adding a little bit of flair to it. And
yep, Alan Shaw again doing his mats.
Yeah. So just to clarify for people who might have not clicked on the link for the Darby O'Gill, the way that this guy does the matte paintings is he like paints on glass that's then put in front of the camera. So when the camera shoots, it's capturing some of the painting and the actors behind the glass. And it's very interesting. I never knew that's how they did matte paintings.
I didn't either. Yeah, wasn't that such a cool short?
Yeah.
It's like 8 minutes or whatever featurette that was on the Darby O'Gill thing. I'll put the link in this one too, because yeah, somebody put it up on YouTube. And it's fascinating if you're interested in that kind of thing. Yeah, in terms of Macarthur, I agree pretty much with all of that. I do think his accent kind of brought it down a bit. He's an odd Disney actor because sometimes when he's doing those more sort of you know, dramatic scenes where he's not getting overly excited, he's just sort of having a dialogue, like he's really good, really believable. And then he sort of when he gets a little more animated, it gets kind of almost, you know, laugh worthy. And then the accent here was just kind of a mess.
Yeah, but I mean, I can understand that. I can see like this because like obviously he's going to grow as an actor. We can see that there's some good acting in there because I mean he goes on to be on a hit television show in the United States, like we've mentioned the first time we talked about James Macarthur. He is was it Dano in Hawaii Five-O? Is that his character? Yeah,
which would have been I guess the 70s or maybe the late 60s, so about a decade after this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean I don't really remember that much of Hawaii Five-O from when I was a kid, but I always thought he did a good job on that. But yeah, clearly he's sort of honing his chops here. And you know, Disney is obviously known for having, you know, child and teen actors sort of honing their skills. They still do it today with Disney Channel and stuff. So yeah, you can give him somewhat of a pass, but he was so good in Third Man on the Mountain that I do think because of the accent, you know, this is a little bit of a step back for him.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, O'Toole was fine. He wasn't in it too much, but I hate me some bagpipes. So as soon as you started playing bagpipes, hated that part.
So yeah, but I mean that's O'Toole's scene. It's the bag.
Well, that's how he got the job.
Yeah, duel of bagpipes. He knew how to play the bagpipes, and that's how he got the job. And for all we know, is the casting director of Lawrence of Arabia saw this movie and he was like, "Get me that guy."
Yes. Yeah. So maybe bagpipes are responsible for Peter O'Toole's career. I don't know, but it appears pretty early too. So right away, I'm like, oh man, between the accent on Macarthur and the bagpipes, you know, what am I in for? I thought this movie was very boring.
Yeah. I did think that the fight scene on the ship was good. I thought that was interesting. But I think the thing that I like the most is the camaraderie. I can't even say
camaraderie.
Okay. Between the two mains characters, I feel like their friendship grows. And then by the last end of the movie, I felt I believed it, and I kind of like their venture back to the House of Shaws once it got actually started moving. But I would agree. I would agree that took a while. I mean, the movie's called Kidnapped, and it took like probably 25 minutes before he even got kidnapped. So it's a very slow movie. So
yeah, it's funny you said that. I actually thought I like missed something in the plot when we were like 25 minutes in. Nobody had been kidnapped yet. I was like, did I miss something? Like, is he not really like supposed to be there? Whatever. And then, okay, fine, he got kidnapped. But then there's only an hour left in the movie. It's not super long.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this for me, Tim, this is one of the worst ones we've watched.
I would say that it's down there, but
yeah,
still my go-to for the worst one is, of course, The Littlest Outlaw, which I believe we give a C- to. I think that's
I think we landed on C- for that.
So I mean, if we're doing grades right now, I'm going to call this a C.
I actually think I would love to give it a C. I really would, but I gotta give it a C-. I think it is tied for me with Littlest Outlaw as the worst one we've seen.
I say it's slightly better because there's somewhat of a story here where Littlest Outlaw was just some boy leading a horse around, and I felt like there was a little bit more to it than this. I
at least could understand what The Littlest Outlaw was about. It wasn't about much, but I was never confused.
Because he told everybody that was a famous horse that he met. I mean,
God, that little kid was so terrible, wasn't he?
But he wasn't even the worst part. It was the little girl.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You know what? All right. I guess. All right. For the scenery.
Yeah.
For the look of this film, I guess I'll agree with your C.
Give it a minus. It's
but
fine.
If we're doing bottom two, it's Littlest Outlaw. Maybe Littlest Outlaw deserves a D+. Maybe that's where we went wrong.
Maybe that's where we went wrong. But I would say that this is the second worst one that we've watched.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my C-. It's so bad. Maybe Littlest Outlaw we were too easy on. Maybe that's our problem.
But we're talking about the great DVD here. We had once again the great option of just play on the DVD menu.
Well, what makes me angry about that, it says like on the back, look at the back of it. It says something like, access, go to this website. So I thought, okay, you go to this website and there's going to be extras that you can like, access from there, which I was a little annoyed by because websites come and go. But when you go on that website, it just says, here's all the movies you can get from the Disney Movie Club that are exclusive DVDs.
Oh, yeah.
It just lists the movies. There's no extras on it. So, yeah, that bummed me out, too.
Yeah.
Another bad one in the books, Tim.
Yeah, another bad one. So I just want to make a correction of what we were talking about the previous Disney ones. We talked about Michael York. Jeff York.
Oh, yeah. Jeff York. Yeah, our buddy.
Like, maybe he's not in any other Disney movies. We have one more to go. He's coming up, I think in 1967. I think it's Savage Sam. He has one more Disney movie.
So that's one of their dog movies.
I don't know. I just recognized the name. And I was like, the Disney movie. And I was like, yes, we get one more Jeff York movie.
The only reason I know that is because Tim knows I run this trivia night at my movie theater. And we did the one category was like Disney dogs. And so I looked up all these dog movies, not knowing they had like 25 different movies about dogs. Savage Sam is one of their dog. It's Boy and His Dog movies.
Okay.
So I guess Jeff York maybe plays the father or something.
Maybe. So up next, we have Pollyanna. We forgot about Pollyanna last week when we were talking about upcoming movies. So Pollyanna's next.
Oh, is that right? I love Pollyanna.
And that is on Plus.
Yeah, I would expect that was a big hit.
Yeah. So it's
okay. And then what? Zorro's after that?
Pollyanna, Sign of Zorro. Then I think it's Jungle Catch.
Yeah.
Then a movie that we might have to find somewhere. 10 Who Dared. I don't know if you have that on DVD.
I actually think, well, I always think I have them. I think I looked ahead on the list and I think I did order it.
Okay. And then we have Swiss Family Robinson. I thought we had 101 Dalmatians prior to Swiss Family Robinson, but that's the one following Swiss Family Robinson, and that's the first movie of 61.
Okay. All right. Well, wow. We've got a long road. What was it? We mentioned a movie last night in person. I was like, oh yeah, I guess we'll talk about that in 7 years. It was like from the 90s.
Yeah. I don't know. It's coming.
They're all coming at some point. All right. Well, Tim, hopefully Pollyanna, from what I remember at least, will be better than this.
Yeah. Is that Haley Mills?
I believe that is the first of the Haley Mills films. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering that right. So, all right. We'll see everybody then. Tim, thanks for joining, and we'll see everybody next time. Bye.
Bye, everybody.